So, first of all, thank you for being patient. It's been so many speakers and I've learned so much from this. So I just want to give you a bit of a background. My name's Geraldine Onek. I'm a primary school teacher. However, I'm currently taking time out of my career to bring up my 3 young boys. So the name Geraldine is actually significant to who I am today. My father chose the name because he had high aspirations for me, even before I was actually born. I was named after Geraldine Ferraro, who was an American Democratic politician and was the first woman to be nominated for vice president by a major political party in the US. So my father believed that one day, I think he wanted me to become a leader, in spite of me being a female or even black. So my paternal grandparents were illiterate, which spurred my own father to appreciate the importance of education and how it can create opportunities. So as a result, he worked hard and won a scholarship to study biomedical science in Lancaster University. And this was the beginning of the change he wanted for himself and for us, his children. We left Sudan, which is now known as South Sudan, and we moved to Lancaster as refugees during the Civil War. And it was my parents' intention to return after my father completed his studies and when it was safe. However, this wasn't the case. The Civil War continued and we were forced to seek asylum, and we have since made Lancaster our home, living here for almost 33 years. As a result, we began to adapt living in Lancaster, a predominantly white city. So first of all, my parents ensured I learned English, which meant they sacrificed speaking their mother tongue to me, just in order for me to be more accepted in today's society. I attended a local primary school, and it was here where I soon discovered how different I actually was. I was the only black child amongst 500 pupils. In spite of that, I did have a good primary education, and it was a happy time for me. And yes, there were a few instances of racism from children. But what I'm about to tell you is a memory that's remained with me until adulthood. It was a story told in our school assembly about a white pool of paint. So the story began in a world where everyone was black. And then one day, a pool of white was discovered. Everyone was intrigued and began to swim in this pool. And when they resurfaced, their skin tone was now white. Word spread and more people came. And the pool started to reduce. And eventually only puddles of white remained. Those who arrived late simply put their palms of their hands and the soles of their feet in what was left. So if this tale wasn't already shocking enough, I, an 8-year-old, was then instructed by the teacher to come and stand at the front of the entire assembly and show my palms as proof. So even as a child, I knew there was no truth in that story, and all it did was actually alienate me even more and highlight my differences further. The teacher who told that story had simply just read a story from a syllabus, whatever it may have been, and not even questioned the content. The question is, would a teacher who was non-white have read that same story to an audience of impressionable children? So it's from that day on, I vowed to myself to use my voice and that I would speak up of any injustices, even if it meant challenging an elder. This was going to be a great trait, especially when I started secondary school, where I attended an all-girls grammar school. Most of the girls were from middle-class white backgrounds, but who seemed obscenely rich compared to me. I was already at a disadvantage. I came from a single-parent household and I was living in a council house. Yet my ability to speak confidently actually gained me popularity from my peers. Sometimes, though, speaking out came with a price. I started to get a reputation from some of the teachers. Even when I was doing well academically, my teachers didn't appreciate my attitude, and I felt I was starting to become singled out. Yet again, I was the only black pupil in 800. So I needed to ensure I worked even harder just in order to prove my worth. So now as a teacher, when I was working in London, I also witnessed how black pupils can sometimes be unfairly targeted for being loud or overly confident. One former colleague even cited one of the reasons of his mental breakdown was a black boy in his class. This child was 6 years old, and this particular boy was actually gifted. And the only problem was he didn't feel challenged enough in the classroom, so became bored and distracted. As I said, as a Black teacher, I felt it was always my duty to speak up and defend those pupils, particularly those who were Black, so they didn't become, yet another statistic. As we all know, Black boys, unfortunately, are more than likely than any ethnicity group to be suspended, expelled, and failed by the education system. I think it's very important to have representation at all levels. Who's going to be able to understand and be able to empathise more than a person who looks just like them? So imagine, throughout my entire 18 years of education, from primary all the way to university, I had one Black educator. Representation is key, and I feel this was the catalyst for me becoming a teacher. So after completing my first year of studies at university, I did most of my placements in mostly white areas in Lancashire. And there was something in me, I was intrigued to see what the other side of the spectrum looked like. So when the opportunity to attend a placement in Newham, London arose, I grabbed it with both hands. And it was here, for the first time in my life, as a Black person, it was refreshing to be someone who wasn't the minority. I immediately felt inspired by my mentor, who was a Black female, and I actually believe this played a significant role in the teacher I am today. The staffing there, again, reflected the school's makeup. Having such a diverse classroom of children meant that the learning was centred around them. The books we chose, the resources we used, even the displays on the walls. It then made me reflect on my own experience as a child and how actually there was a lack of diversity in the books we read, even at secondary level. Some people might argue, okay, this is unnecessary in those schools where they're predominantly white. But this isn't just about educating those and giving them a better historical representation, or for Black and Asian children to learn about the biographies of their ancestors and people who look like them. Although it is important, what I'm saying is the Black curriculum should actually be taught in all schools, even if 100% of the pupils are white. Because it's important for all children to learn that, those great men of history that we read about and dominate your history books, sometimes and often they have a complex and sometimes awful, sometimes awful individuals who operate within a wider context. And there's this image of this white saviour and it's so powerful that it permeates in today's society and underpins racism on an individual and societal level. Yet recently, when the Black curriculum, an organisation who are trying to embed Black history into the curriculum, the State Secretary rejected meeting them. As he stated, Gavin Williamson argued that the framework was already broad and balanced and flexible, therefore allowing schools to teach Black history, if they so wish to, though. So, however, without explicit reference of the national curriculum or exam specifications, schools and teachers are not encouraged to teach Black history, So as a teacher, I already know what strains we are under. We have so much content to cover, pupils have assessments to pass, and there's simply not enough hours. But change needed to happen. So personally for me, I don't know what it was, what the catalyst was for this newfound fire of change I was craving. I don't know whether it's the horrendous murder of George Floyd that angered me so much, or actually whether the fact I have 3 mixed race boys who will most of them likely be treated as Black, I had to consider for. Either way, COVID took away my procrastination and I had to act. So when I attended the vigil of George Floyd in Lancaster, all of a sudden I was thrown into the spotlight as being one of the few Black people in Lancaster. I was interviewed by the local paper about my own experience of racism, and it was through this article I was quoted as being the quiet one, but not anymore. So recently I've spoken on Stand Up to Racism and represented the Black community at council, asking how they are going to help decolonise the city as well as our curriculum. I'm also working with head teachers in how to embed Black history into their curriculum. And with myself and a friend have set up a group, Black history of Lancaster, to find out our hidden histories. I just want to say, I know today, especially the civil rights icon and Congressman John Lewis passed away, and a quote which sticks with me is, "Do not get lost in the sea of despair. Be hopeful, be optimistic. Our struggle is not the struggle of a lifetime. Never ever be afraid to make some noise and get in good trouble, necessary trouble." Thank you very much.